Welcome. On behalf of the Canadian Antisemitism Education Foundation and the Israel Defense and Security Forum, welcome to this very important program, Antisemitism on the World Stage. I'm Andrea Spindle, Executive Director of CAEF, and it's an honor for CAEF to be hosting the esteemed Brigadier General Amir Avivi, founder and CEO of IDSF, and to work in collaboration with this incredible Israeli NGO. Before I begin, I'd like to invite Irving Weisdorf and Daryl Bonder to come up to the bima to read the prayer for the soldiers of Israel and for the hostages who remain captive in Gaza.
May God, who blessed our ancestors Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Sarah, Rebekah, Rachel, and Leah, bless the fighters of the Israel Defense Forces and Security Forces who stand guard over our land and the cities of our God from the border of Lebanon to the desert of Egypt and from the great sea unto the approach of the Arava, on the land, in the air, and on the sea. May God cause the enemies who rise up against us to be struck down. May the Holy One, blessed be He, preserve and rescue our fighting men and women from every trouble and distress, and from every plague and illness. May God send blessing and success in their every endeavor. May God lead our soldiers under their sway and grant them salvation and crown them with victory. And may there be fulfilled for them the verse, for it is Hashem your God who goes with you to battle, your enemies for you to save you. Now let us say, Amen.
May the Lord, who blessed our ancestors Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Sarah, Rebekah, Rachel, and Leah, bless, preserve, and protect the captives and missing soldiers of the citizens of Israel and the Israeli Defense Force. May God rescue them from captivity and speedily restore them in peace, in the merit of the prayers of this holy congregation who pray for them. May the Holy One, blessed be God, show them mercy, increase their strength, remove their pain, and send them a recovery of body and spirit. May God return them to the bosom of their families swiftly and soon. And let us say amen.
I'd like to now acknowledge and thank our co-sponsors, Mizrahi Canada, TAFSEEK, One Global Voice, the Canadian Institute for Jewish Research, the Toronto Zionist Council, Cherut Canada, Canadians for Israel, and our great ally, the International Christian Embassy, Jerusalem. Thank you all. A special thank you to our wonderful volunteers who regularly assisted our events and those of our partner organizations. Thanks especially to Daphne Pollock, the volunteer extraordinaire, for organizing our team. And Daphne wants you all to know that she's got cue cards for those who want to ask a question. There will be volunteers handing out cue cards and pencils, so you write your question down and we'll gather them up. Okay, it's now my pleasure to introduce our program. Rabbi Moshe Davis, the Director of International Operations for IDSF, is the well-known and welcome face of the daily briefing provided by IDSF to the global Jewish world. He has brought Israel and the Seven Front War against Israel into our homes, with daily updates, deep and critical analysis, invaluable insights by leading experts, and regular updates from General Avivi on the front line. We are ever mindful that what is happening in Israel affects Jews everywhere. We must also understand that what happens to Jews around the world is being watched by Israel, and with the rising tide of anti-Semitism globally, our Israeli mishpacha is very concerned. We are one Jewish family, one Jewish world, one small microcosm of the thousands of years of our people's development and our contributions to the world at large. Canadian Jews make up just 0.9% of the total population, yet experience 70% of religiously motivated hate crimes. And that's not including the thousands of unreported crimes, insults, slanders, threats lies, and general bigotry that is experienced daily across this country. Standing up to it requires confidence, courage, creativity, compassion, and a crusader mentality. There is no more important cause today for Jews than combating anti-Zionism, which is antisemitism. CAEF invites all of you to become involved. Visit our website, register for our online and in-person programs, donate to CAEF, and volunteer. Do not stay idle as the Jewish people engage in this crucial battle of our lifetime, fighting the forces of evil from many sources. It's now my pleasure to introduce Rabbi Moshe Davis, who will formally introduce our guest speaker. Rabbi Davis is a native of Chicago who made Aliyah in 2023 after 20 years of serving as a rabbi for several Jewish communities in the U.S. He lives in Beit Shemesh with his wife. He has 4 children. And as he points out, he's the only rabbi who transitioned from Torah to national security. After General Avivi speaks, questions will be moderated by Moshe. And I invite you all again to pay attention, rate your questions, and participate. Moshe?
Thank you, Andrea, for putting this together. It's so wonderful to come back to Toronto and see so many friends, so many supporters. It's really, it's not easy to leave Israel. It's certainly not easy to leave Israel in a war, but to come to a group like this is really inspiring. So thank you so much. We live at a time that really requires clarity and strength and unity. And you look at the media, you look in the news, it's so hard to know what's right, what's wrong, what's true, what's not true. And we try very hard at IDSF to bring you the truth so that you can really understand what is happening in the war. And of course, at the helm of IDSF is Brigadier General Amir Avivi, really bringing clarity, truth, strength, and unity to the world and to Israel. You are all invited to come visit us in Israel and spend a day in the life of General Avivi. I promise you, you will not be able to keep up. And you're going to have to fight off all of the people who rush him in order to get his autograph, to pose for a selfie, and to really thank him for bringing that strength to Israel. And the IDF, Israel Defense Force, is fighting for Israel. IDSF is making sure that that fight is not in vain. We're making sure that policymakers around the world understand what Israel needs to be safe and secure, and that society, both in Israel and abroad, is empowered to understand the critical national security issues facing Israel and all of the West. And as we'll hear tonight, some of those issues, as you know very well, extend to these shores and to this very community. So it's my great pleasure to be able to introduce Brigadier General Amir Avivi, a great visionary and leader in Israel. General, please.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm honored. Thank you. I served in the army 30 years in the combat engineers, really the kings of this war. And when I retired after 30 years, I was very, very worried about where things are going, talking about, not only Israel's national security, but really the Jewish world and the challenges we are facing. And 3 years after my retirement, I said, okay, I need to do something about that, and I decided to found IDSF. Started with 8 officers that founded the nonprofit, the NGO. And today, more than 50,000 Israeli officers, commanders, operators, and many, many, many supporters around the world have joined. And I remember 3 years ago, almost two years before the war, some of the generals called me and said, Amir, listen, big things are happening. We need to meet urgently and discuss what is going on. And it was so urgent that we met on Friday morning in my garden, in my house in Caesarea, 15 generals and commanders, and we sat for 3 hours discussing what we think is happening in Israel. And after 3 hours, we got to a very clear conclusion. Israel is on its way to war. And we asked ourselves, okay, what do? We know that war is coming 2 years before the war. And we said we'll write a very extensive national security assessment, 300 pages document, really explaining what we are facing, what are the dangers. And in this paper, which was presented, by the way, to the former government, to Netanyahu when he was in the opposition, to the head of Mossad, to the president, to the National Security Council, really to the most important people. In this document, we talked about 4 very big threats that Israel and the Jewish world are facing. And we didn't talk just about Israel, we talked about the whole Jewish world. The first threat we talked about was Iran and all its proxies, Hamas, Hezbollah, militias in Syria, in Iraq, in Yemen, the aspiration of Iran for nuclear capabilities. All the war Israel is facing now, in the last year and a half, is one threat out of 4, which we outlined in this document. See, this Iranian threat, with all its proxies, it's about drones, missiles, rockets, commando forces on our borders. It's all one logic, it's one system, but it's one threat out of 4. The second threat we addressed was what we called the fight over the land of Israel. The same Israeli-Arab conflict that has been going on for the last 100 years, even more. And this conflict doesn't know green lines and armistice lines. It's all over the land of Israel. It's illegal grab of land in Judea and Samaria. It's illegal grab of land in the Negev, in the Galil. It's undermining security of Jews everywhere. It's undermining a very basic identity and right for our own land. And what we said to the government, it's not that you are not dealing with this well. You are not really understanding that we are in a campaign. It's like they are playing American football and we are playing cricket. We are not even on the same playground. And when you don't understand that you are facing a real war, you don't prepare, you don't know how to act. The third threat we addressed 2 years before the war was delegitimation and anti-Semitism that is raging in the world. And I can tell you that 2 years before the war, in Israel, there was very, very low really understanding of what the Jewish world is facing, talking about anti-Semitism, and also not a real understanding what delegitimation is all about, what is Hague, what is UN, UNRWA, all the things that we see now in the war. But we had outlined that 2 years before, and I wrote extensively about that in the book that I published half a year before the war, and now is available also in English, No Retreat. These 3 threats I mentioned now are all external. But we also talked about the 4th threat, which is the biggest one of all. It's us, the Jews. It's the fact that many Jews are distancing from core Zionist Jewish values, distancing from Israel, assimilation. If we want to really deal with external enemies, we first need to build our own resilience as a nation that has the greatest story of all. I'm sure many of you are asking yourself, how can it be that after such an attack of Hamas, a massacre of 1,200 people, women were raped, people were burned alive, heads of children were decapitated. How can it be that the world is not standing with us? How can it be that we are dealing with such big anti-Semitism? Well, I want to tell you something. This is not new, not even in Canada. You know, when I did my bachelor's degree in 1992, 1993, I studied American history and political science. And one of the things I studied is what did America and Canada do in the Second World War, talking about refugees, Jewish refugees. And it turns out that Canada, under the leadership of Prime Minister King, in the Second World War, throughout the whole war, knowing that millions of Jews are being exterminated in Nazi camps, Canada refused to receive Jewish refugees. From 1933, when the Nazis started, all the way to 1945, only less than 5,000 Jews were allowed to enter Canada. When the Jews tried to send 300 boys and girls from Europe to Canada to save them from the Holocaust, 300 kids, Canada refused. But when Britain wanted to send 3,000 children that are not in the danger of being exterminated by the Nazis, they were simply moved from London to the countryside, and they wanted to move them for a certain period of time to Canada, they gladly accepted them, but not the Jews. And when Jewish ships with refugees came to the shores of Canada and America, they were sent back to die in the Holocaust. And when the Holocaust ended, when it was crystal clear that 6 million Jews, a third of our people, were exterminated in gas chambers, and then there was the discussion in the US, are they going to vote for a Jewish state or not? Both the Pentagon and the State Department, in writing, said to the president, we must not support a Jewish state. Why? Because the Jews are weak and the Arabs are strong and we need good relations with the Arabs. They have oil. And they didn't care about the fact that 6 million Jews died. And it was really a miracle that at the time the president, Truman, decided he will vote for a Jewish state. Now, I don't know if you know that, but Ben-Gurion, after he finished his position as the Prime Minister of Israel, a few years later, he had an interview, a famous interview, with Chaim Yavin, the leading anchor TV guy at the time in Israel. And Chaim Yavin asked Prime Minister Ben-Gurion, who founded the country, who do we need to thank for? Who do we need to thank for having the state of Israel? And Ben-Gurion, without hesitating, says, the Russians. So the reason why the US voted for a Jewish state, among other things, is because they knew that the Russians are going to vote. And you know why the Russians wanted a Jewish state? Because they were sure that this state will be communist. This is why, at a certain period of time, they supported that. But 6 months or 8 months later, they wouldn't have supported the state at all. So why be surprised if 6 million Jews died in concentration camps and both the US and Canada closed their borders to Jews? Why be surprised that 1,200 people were massacred by Hamas? And, you know, we're supposed to be surprised that there is anti-Semitism. We shouldn't be surprised. When the State of Israel was founded, in 1948, we had the Independence War. 7 countries attacked us. Somehow we managed to win. We liberated the Galil and the Negev. The war ends after they tried to exterminate us. And what does the US say to Israel? You need to retreat. You need to retreat from the Negev and the Galil. And Ben-Gurion says, but if we retreat, we won't exist. We won't be able to defend ourselves. He said, we don't care. You have to retreat. And Ben-Gurion, you know, leading a country of 600,000 Jews, small, no economy, poor, small country, stands strong and says, I am not retreating. And what was the answer of the US? Military embargo on Israel. A military embargo of the Jewish state that is facing 7 countries that wants to exterminate it, and after a Holocaust of 6 million Jews. The US continued this embargo all the way to 67. So you think that we had good relations with the US for a long time? No. All the way to 67. Only in 67, the US decided that it needs really good relations with Israel. What happened in 67? Six-Day War. So what's the lesson? You want good relations? Be strong. You want good relations? Win the war decisively. The Jewish people are not interesting if they are weak. We are interesting only if we are strong. This is how international relations works. It's not about appeasing. It's not about disregarding who we are. It's about being a proud nation, a strong nation, a determined nation. This is how you get good international relations. And we are in a very, very defining moment. You know, when we published this national security assessment at the time, we were so worried talking about so many challenges that we wanted to express the way we feel in a picture. So we put on the cover of this assessment a picture of a frog being boiled in a pot. And we said, this is Israel. Israel is being boiled in a pot. Not only Israel, the whole Jewish world. And if we don't do something about it, we'll face an existential threat. You know what they say about frogs? If you take a frog and throw it into boiling water, obviously the frog will jump out. It's boiling. But if you take a frog and put it in cold water and gradually heat it, you heat it, you heat it, you heat it, at a certain point the frog might say, jacuzzi, cool. But then you heat it a bit more and the frog will start to boil until it will die. This is how we felt about our situation as a nation, not only Israel, the whole Jewish world. And if you would have asked me 2 years before the war, what do we do? How do we change our fate? What are we supposed to do? It was very hard to give a good answer. What we said to the government at the time, look, you have only 2 choices. It's either going to be a 6-day war scenario or a Yom Kippur scenario. We need to choose. It was very hard at the time to be proactive and decide to go, in a war. And this is how, at the end of the day, we got to the 7th of October. And as devastating as this day was, really on a biblical level, as devastating as this day was, on the 7th of October, something else happened. On the 7th of October, this frog jumped out of the pot. It's not there anymore. And we got the chance to change our fate, not only of Israel, the Jewish people. On the 7th of October, there was a big crisis, but also a big awakening of the Jewish people to understand what we're facing, to be proud again of who we are. And talking about fighting anti-Semitism, endless amount of money and efforts have been really invested in fighting anti-Semitism. And what is the result? Complete failure. So what should we do differently? I think that really the core issue is that we are fighting a battle of narratives, a battle of stories. There are only 2 stories in this battle. One is completely fake. And this fake story says the following: Palestine will be free from the river to the sea, from the Jordan Valley all the way to the Mediterranean Sea. Where are the Jews in this scenario? Where are they? In the sea. So basically, what they are saying is, there was supposedly a state called Palestine, and these Jews, they came from Europe and conquered a state called Palestine, and every day that passes, they are conquering it more and more, and this is the story they are trying to portray. No matter that, we are the indigenous people of the land of Israel, and that the name Palestine has nothing to do with Arabs or Muslims, and everything to do with Jewish history. When did the name Palestine was created? You know? Romans. We rebelled against the Romans twice. The first time we rebelled against the Romans, they destroyed our second temple. That was in 70, after Christ. And then 62 years later actually, the Jewish people rebelled again. And the hero that led this rebellion was Bar Kokhba. And we actually managed to get rid of the Romans, at least for 3 years, and liberate Israel. But Romans understood that if Israel will manage to really kick them out of Israel for good, the whole Roman Empire will collapse. Because if we, small nation, manage to rebel, everybody will rebel. So they brought huge forces to Israel. And at the end of the day, they won decisively. More than 1 million Jews died in the Battle of Beitar. And when this battle was over, the Romans said, okay, that's it. We have had it with these stubborn Jews. We really need to erase completely their connection to their land. And what the Romans did, they did 3 things. One, they changed the name of Jerusalem. They completely destroyed Jerusalem. The old city you visit today has nothing to do with the way Jerusalem looked in Jewish times. The old city of Jerusalem is a Roman city. It has a cardo. It has nothing to do with the way the city was when it was Jewish. The only remain in the old city that is Jewish is the walls, is the Western Wall. Actually, all the walls of the temple. They didn't manage to dismantle them. Big stones. And they changed the name of Jerusalem. They changed it to Ilia Capitolina. Now, why this name didn't stay Ilia Capitolina throughout history? Because of Christianity. Because when Christianity was created and they came back to conquer the land of Israel, they brought back the name Jerusalem. The second thing the Romans did is disperse the Jews all over the world. They learned the lesson looking at the Assyrians and the Babylonians. The Assyrians and the Babylonians took the Jews out of the land, but they sent them all together to the area of Iraq, Iran. So the Jews stayed together and then they came back. So the Romans said, okay, this is not going to work. We have to disperse the Jews everywhere in the ancient world. So they cannot go back. They enslaved the Jews also. But the third thing they did, they said, we need to change the name of the land from Judea to Palestina, a name Arabs cannot even pronounce. And this happened hundreds and hundreds of years before Islam and before Arabs left the Arab peninsula. The name Palestine had everything to do with Jewish history and nothing to do with Arabs or Muslims. And it was crystal clear throughout history. This is the reality. Everybody knew that Palestine is about Jews. The flag of Palestine, even before Israel, was Magen David. So what happened? What happened was that in the 60s, when Israel won decisively the war, not only against the Arab countries, but also against Russia, and when Israel allied with the US, Russians understood that Israel is a big problem for them. And they decided to push an agenda that will take Zionism and compare it to Nazism. Until the 60s, until the Six-Day War, and throughout the history of mankind, we were the biggest story in the history of the globe. There is no bigger story than the story of the Jewish people. This is why it was embraced by all the world. Moses, King David, King Solomon. Kings and queens were crowned in Europe with the music of Handel, talking about the coronation of King Solomon. We were the big story, the greatest brand in the history of the world. But then the Russians said, we are going to change everything. We are going to create a completely new narrative that says that the Jews are occupiers, that they are like Nazis. And the amazing thing about this campaign they created is that at a certain point, even many Jews started believing in that. How did it change so much? And look, at the end of the day, every good story has a hero and a villain. It cannot be that we are the villains in our own story. We are the heroes of our own story. And if you want to fight anti-Semitism, it starts first and foremost about educating the Jewish people. It's about building our resilience, our proudness. Jews need to get back to be proud of who they are. I can tell you that, I spent most of my young life outside of Israel. I know what it is to study in international schools, to study in the diaspora, and to deal with anti-Semitism. Many Israelis don't, but I do. And I remember at the age of 16, I arrived with my family to Rome. My father was cultural attaché at the embassy, and they sent me to study in a British high school. And if you know the British system, in the school you have houses, like Harry Potter, right? And these houses, like Harry Potter, they compete all year long, in every sport you can imagine. It's all about the houses. Everything revolves around these houses. And I arrived at the age of 16, new, Jew, Israeli, in a school full of English, Italians, Arabs, people from all over the world, the national school. At the age of 17, a year later, I became deputy house captain. And a year later, at the age of 18, they made me house captain in my school. Now, being a house captain in a British school, it's an automatic entrance to Cambridge, to Oxford. It's really something very meaningful. And at that time, when I was young, okay, so they made me house captain, so what? But, years later, I thought about it a lot. What happened there? How can it be that a Jew, an Israeli, new in school, in 2 years becomes house captain? I thought about it a lot. And I could have attributed that to the fact, I had natural leadership and I also excelled in sports, but really there was something else. Coming from a family that has been living in the land of Israel for 15 generations. My family arrived to Israel in 1620, to the old city in Jerusalem. And a family that has deep roots and respect to who we are. And when I was young, even at the age of 16, 17, all 3,700 years of Jewish history were inside me. I had a lot of awareness about who we are as a nation. And this reflected everywhere. And I learned a big lesson that every single Jew should learn. When you respect yourself, people will respect you. And if you disregard who you are, your identity, your history, your nation, how special we are, people will disregard you, will disrespect you. We really, really need to build back the proudness and connection, of our people to who they are. And looking at the challenges we are facing now in Israel, and comparing this, by the way, to the Six-Day War. And no, it's not a Six-Day War, it's a long war. But the outcome needs to be the same. The only explanation Israel needs to give in this war is winning it decisively on all fronts. And I promise you that when we'll win decisively this war, and it's going to be won decisively in the coming year, when we'll win decisively the war, the bigger the win will be, the more decisive it's going to be, the greater the golden age of Israel and the Jewish people will be the day after. The day after this war, there will be peace agreements. The economy is going to bloom. There is going to be massive aliyah to Israel. There's also going to be baby boom, like any war. So we have a great, great future awaiting us. But in order to reach this future, we need to stay united and fight until we win decisively. And the message is the Jewish people are strong, resilient. Nobody is going to bring us on our knees. We're going to win and strive and be a great nation among the nations of the world. Thank you very much.
So we have way more questions than we're going to cover. That is the story of my life. If we don't get to them today, we'll get to them tomorrow. So that's a little plug. We're doing a live briefing here from Toronto, so if you sent in a question, you don't hear it called out, tune in tomorrow. General, it's always a pleasure to hear you speak, and your message is not just of military strategy and all the bad things happening in the world, but it's really a message of energy, of hope. And we're gonna jump right into the questions, unfiltered in the order in which I've randomly organized them in my hand right now. Question number one, what is the role of religion and ideology in this war?
So it's definitely a religious war. I think that the one understanding that we need to have about the challenges that we face is that the whole idea of Islam, and to a certain extent also it's relevant for at least Catholic Christianity in a way, is the idea that the Jews were the chosen people. All the religions agree, the monotheistic religions agree that the Jews were the chosen people. But the story is that, the Jews were rebellious, all the time did problems to God. All our Bible is, us being really rebellious. And then God got fed up with us at a certain point. So we have the Old Testament, and then we have the New Testament. Meaning, God is not with the Jews anymore. Now, God is at the beginning with the Christians, and then the Muslims come and say, now God is with us. Now, the moment that the Jews started coming back to their own land, the moment that it seems that really everything that a prophet said is coming true, this is basically undermining the basic notion of Islam. It's undermining it. They cannot live with the idea that the Jews are building their nation in the land of Israel, because if this is the case, religiously speaking, it means we are actually the chosen people. And therefore, the radical Islam believes that if we manage to thrive in our own homeland, they are done. And the only way they can make sure that they stay the chosen ones, is completely eradicate the Jews in their homeland, and then afterwards also in other places.
We're just going to be jumping from topic to topic. It has been reported that Iran has already, in fact, been able to create a nuclear device. Can you comment on this?
So, we have to be careful when talking about intelligence, because we saw very clearly that Israel doesn't always know exactly what's going on, but at least when I talk to the chief of staff and to the leadership of the army and the Mossad, they feel that they have a very good understanding of what's going on in Iran, and they believe that Iran hasn't yet reached nuclear capabilities, but we don't have a lot of time, and Israel is in full readiness to attack in Iran. It's in full readiness and also full willingness to do so. And the only thing that is at the moment really preventing Israel from launching an attack is hoping that the U.S. will join, that the U.S. will give us the green light, and maybe even lead this attack on the Iranian nuclear installations. So we're waiting to see how the talks with Iran will end. We believe that there is no chance that Iranians will agree to anything that the U.S. is really pushing, talking about no enrichment at all in Iran. It's not something the Iranians can agree. So my assessment is that in the coming months, we'll see an attack on these nuclear sites, and I'm hoping that we'll attack together with the U.S.
What does a successful strike on Iranians' nuclear sites look like? Does it mean that they are completely vanquished and destroyed? Are they just set back 5-10 years? What is success in that arena?
So I think we definitely want to destroy the sites, but to what extent they will be destroyed, among other things, it depends if the U.S. is part of the attack or not. I mean, the U.S. has certain capabilities that Israel doesn't have. On the other hand, I must say that in the last year, in the war, Israel developed cutting-edge technologies that are so advanced and out of the box that they are going to give Israel really a technological edge 50 years ahead over all the countries. What Israel is developing is beyond imagination, and I can tell you that throughout the war, the military industries of Israel have grown exponentially and are producing a lot of capabilities and munitions and building more and more lines of production. Israel is changing very fast in the war. We hear only, about the downside. We hear about the soldiers that are falling and the difficulties and the reservists. But really, behind the scenes, there is a huge, huge development and change that will shape things for Israel for many, many generations.
You spoke about radicalism and the extremists out there. Is there a strategy that you have or that the State of Israel has to really build up and boost the non-extremists out there, the non-radical Islamists, so to speak, in support of Jews and Israel?
Yes, so when we look at the Middle East is all the time moving along three main axes. One is the radical Shia axis led by Iran and all its proxies. The other one is the radical Sunni axis led by Turkey, Qatar, Julani forces, ISIS, Al-Qaeda, Muslim Brotherhood, all these radical Sunni groups. And then you have the moderate Sunni states like Saudi Arabia, Emirates. And I think that the clear understanding is that we need a Western Israeli moderate Sunni alliance, an alliance that will extend all the way to Indonesia. And this alliance has two main missions. One is to stand strong against these two evil axes we are dealing in the Middle East, but also to counter the Chinese, Russian, Iranian front that has emerged in the last few years and really strengthen the West and its ability to deal with the challenges the East really brings. The world is changing fast. Many of the capabilities are moving to the East. There are technologies developed in the East, and if the West wants to be relevant and competitive, they really need Israeli capabilities. So it's not only that Israel needs an alliance with the West needs Israel.
There are a good amount of questions here related to Qatar, so I'm not going to go through every version of the question, but are you able to articulate your feelings on Qatar and the future that Israel and the U.S. Could shape with them?
So Qatar is a terrible country, really. It's a country with an ideology of Muslim Brotherhood, a big supportive of Hamas. But the big problem with Qatar, that is, with all their money, they are really influencing in a very, very bad way Western societies. They are very active in the US, pouring huge amounts of money in politics in both parties, Democratic and Republican. They are active in universities and in schools. They are buying soccer teams and businesses. They're all over the place. And unfortunately, their way of operation, pouring all these huge amounts of money, is effective. And they're having a lot of influence. And really the challenge is how to make the world understand that this is a very, very dangerous and vicious country that needs to be kept at leash. And there is a big challenge here. And we're not really dealing with this the right way.
Somewhat related to that question, President Trump. It's very difficult for people to assess where he stands on Israel, his allegiance to Qatar versus Israel. You have absolutely had many meetings in D.C. with policymakers and the administration. What can you share with us about that?
Yes, so I think there is a whole campaign all the time trying to portray a reality that Israel and the U.S. are not aligned, are distancing, are not coordinated. I don't think this is the reality. From what I see, really talking in Washington, but also with the Israeli government, there is very, very close coordination between Israel and the U.S. We all understand the main issues. We are now in a situation where in a year there will be elections in Israel, maybe sooner, but it's supposed to be in a year. And in a year there will be also elections in the US. And I think that both leaders want to reach this point of elections after winning decisively the war in Gaza and Iran, after signing peace agreements with Saudi Arabia and other countries. So there is a very clear time frame. We don't have a lot of time. This is why the Israeli government is giving the army very clear timetable to win the war in Gaza and deal with Iran. And in this scenario, I think the interests are aligned, both of Israel and the US, to achieve all these goals. We don't always 100% agree on the tactics, but the end state is clear for both countries.
So to everyone sending in these questions, they're great questions, and also it's a wonderful crowd here, very thoughtful and considerate. In general, I'm skipping some of the things, but people are writing words of encouragement, by the way, on these. So this person writes, "Thank you for founding IDSF," and then goes into the question. So whoever you are, thank you, and to all the other people who are writing, thank you. Thank you. Do you think that the current regime in Syria will be able to free itself from Turkey?
Well, I think that, Syria is not yet really a state. It's unclear to what will happen in the future, whether they will stabilize, whether they will go back to civil war. Syria, at the moment, is torn apart. You have an Alawi area that is under Russian influence. You have the Druze area under Israeli influence. Kurd area under US influence, and Julani forces that are very radical, Sunni radical forces that are under Turkish influence. And because there is a lot of uncertainty, the only main thing Israel can do is stay on the Golan, on the Hermon, stay inside Syria, build together with the Druze inside Syria an area that is secure, making sure that no jihadists get near the border of Israel. And we are having coordination with the US, with the Russians, and with the Turks to try not to create a clash between the different powers and try to stabilize the situation. But where things are going in Syria, it's not clear. But one thing I can tell you for sure, if I take a snapshot of the north of Israel now, I can say that we have never had a better situation in the north than what we have now. So Israel managed to win decisively against Hezbollah. Hezbollah is on its knees. Israel is attacking every day the remains of Hezbollah, every day, even today, and degrading them continuously. Syrian army is wiped out. All the capabilities that were in Syria were destroyed, or at least most of them. And yes, it's not completely stable, but strategically speaking, we're in a completely different reality in the north. It's a big, big success, thanks to the army and the Mossad and 5,000 pagers that exploded simultaneously. Amazing job.
What is the current threat level from Egypt, and would Israel be able to repel an attack from Egypt?
So, you know, with Egypt, on the paper we have a peace agreement, but the Egyptians, throughout the last decade or two, they have built a mighty army and a big navy and air force, and they're producing tanks. And I think that in this war, if the IDF for many, many years said, we don't have to build ourselves to deal with big armies. We have terror and we have terror armies, but not regular armies. I think that in the war, there is an understanding that the two future challenges Israel might have to deal with is Egypt and Turkey. And these are two big armies. So the Israeli army will definitely continue and build itself to be able to deal with this maybe future threat that we'll see. But I must say that for Egypt, it's not so easy to challenge us because there is the whole Sinai Peninsula. And if they move tanks and APCs in this huge desert, for us, this is probably the most convenient kind of warfare for Israelis. So yes, we have to be alert, we have to be ready, we have to build ourselves, but I think it's definitely something that we can cope with.
General, just a very easy question right here. What does the day after this war look like?
So on the regional level, I would say that the day after this war is Israel being a regional and global power. It's these peace agreements I talked about, this building alliance with the West and Israel and the Sunni world, an alliance that will enable to build new routes of commerce that will connect India to UAE and from UAE through Saudi Arabia and Jordan to Israel. Israel will be the Singapore of the world. All world trade is going to go through Israel. And this is going to give Israel a very important place on the international stage. Looking inside the land of Israel, the day after the war in Gaza, Israel is saying the day after Hamas, and there is no day after that is not the day after Hamas. The day after Hamas, there will be no Hamas, no Palestinian Islamic Jihad, and also not the Palestinian Authority. And because Israel already decided that, we need to build another vision. And looking at the day after in Gaza, there is two main visions. One is really the vision of President Trump of relocating the Gazans to new countries. And I think that President Trump is taking this seriously, and Israel also. There are many, many, many Gazans who don't want to live in this place. And if there will be countries who will be willing to receive them, definitely there is the ability to help them relocate as long as they want. Nobody is going to be relocated forcibly. But of course, there will be Gazans who will stay in Gaza. And the vision for the day after in Gaza is, first, overriding security responsibility of Israel all over the Gaza Strip. We're not going to do the same mistake we did in the disengagement. But we don't have any interest to manage everyday life of Gazans. This is why Israel is building relations with the local clans, the families. I believe Israel will cantonize Gaza. There will be areas of governance of different clans in the different cities, very similar to the Emirates, like Dubai, Abu Dhabi, kind of city-states. And I think that this idea is very, very relevant also for the cities in Judea and Samaria, for Ramallah, for Hebron, Nablus, and so on. And I think this will be the kind of solution that will be pushed. And this solution enable us also to apply sovereignty on vast areas in Judea and Samaria and the Jordan Valley in order to really secure Israel and build our future in a way that Israel will be secure for generations to come.
You describe a beautiful picture of what Israel can and will look like. How confident are you that President Trump will go along with all of those different components of the day after?
Well, I think that, when President Trump was president the first time, he tried to push sovereignty in areas in Judea and Samaria. But at the end of the day, they went to the Abraham Accords and he wasn't elected for a second term. So I think we have a good chance after the war, first to do these regional peace agreements, but then also talk about a viable solution. And to do that, Israel needs to come with a clear plan, what Israel wants. And the way this administration is dealing with things, they are saying to Israel, look, it's your land, tell us what you want. And it's time for Israel to really build a very clear vision of what we want. And we in IDSF, I think we have the right ideas and the right vision. We're trying to really convey these ideas to the government in order for them to adopt it and push it forward.
Much of Israeli society can be put into two camps, those in favor of Bibi and those against Bibi. How important do you think it is right now to avoid elections or to specifically go into elections?
I think that having elections in the middle of a war, it's completely crazy. Completely. Doesn't make sense. How can we deal with elections when we have hostages? How can we deal with elections when our soldiers are fighting and endangering their lives in the battlefield? The only thing the country needs to be dealing with is winning this war, supporting our soldiers, supporting the families, and doing everything to bring back the hostages. I think it's insulting to our soldiers and to the hostages and to the families of the fallen that politicians deal with elections in the middle of a war.
There are continued demonstrations in Israel to stop the war and to bring home the hostages. What are your thoughts on these activities? And do these signs of negativity affect the morale of the soldiers fighting in Gaza?
At the beginning of the war, Israel set crystal clear goals that need to be met in the Gaza Strip. First goal was to eradicate Hamas as a governmental and military entity, to bring back all the hostages, and to create a reality that never again there will be a terror army in Gaza endangering the Israeli society. And I think we must really reach all three goals. Without reaching them, Israel will be in grave danger, and not only Israel, the whole Middle East. Because if Hamas, as a Muslim Brotherhood entity, will manage to survive, and surviving means winning the war, this is not just going to impact Israel's future. This might bring a collapse to countries all over the Middle East, because then the sense will be the radical Islam won. The same effect that the US retreat from Afghanistan had on the region. So this is not an option. We need to win decisively, and winning decisively means reaching all three goals of war. We need to eradicate Hamas, we need to bring our hostages back, and we need to make sure that never again there will be a terror army in Gaza.
What is your reaction to those in Canada, the Canadian government, who are investigating IDF soldiers for war crimes, and the lone soldiers from Canada who are over in Israel fighting and are now finding themselves being publicized for their support of Israel?
I think that everybody here understands that the IDF is the most moral army in the world. There is no army in the world that really tries to minimize collateral damage and fight in a way that on one hand will reach the missions, but also keeping societies safe. And I think that the fact that Israel is charged, really there is a demand from Israel that no other country is demanded. This is anti-Semitism, sorry. I mean, anti-Semitism is about double standards. It's about demanding from the Jews something different than any other country in the world. And this is something we cannot accept. We have the right to defend ourselves. We have the right to live, to thrive, to be able to defend ourselves against these vicious enemies. And we are fighting on 7 different fronts. And I think that the big mistake countries like UK or France and possibly also Canada are doing, they think that if they will attack Israel and appease radical Islam, this will work well for them. And the news is, no, it's not going to work. It's going to be exactly the opposite. The countries that are attacking Israel are the countries that are going to suffer from the worst security situation in their own countries. Because the way radical Islam looks at it, they look at it as weakness. They don't appreciate appeaseness. They don't appreciate people who don't have values, who don't stand for their own values. And when a democratic country, a Western country, doesn't stand for its own values, this is perceived as weakness. And it comes as no surprise that we see riots in France. It comes as no surprise that we see it also in the UK. And I think that I can only hope, that this kind of mentality will change. But I can assure you one thing. We are not going to stop until we win decisively. This is our answer to all these attacks.
Following up on these issues of the diaspora, reading the question, is it too late for America? And then I'll combine that with another question. At what point should diaspora Jewry consider making Aliyah? That was a question submitted.
So I think that, as you probably understood, I'm a very optimistic guy. And I really believe that following this war, a great future is awaiting Israel. I must say sincerely, I'm much less optimistic about anti-Semitism. And my projection is that in the coming decade, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of Jews will make Aliyah to Israel. And I think that Israel really has a responsibility first to secure Israel and prepare it for massive Aliyah, but also a responsibility to understand that it is Israel's responsibility to protect the Jewish people wherever they are. And we need to invest much more in that, budget and plans, and how to really engage with different countries and with different communities and enhance the security of Jews everywhere. After this war, Israel will face two main challenges. One will be internal security inside Israel, dealing with Israeli Arabs, with Bedouins, with maybe Judah and Samaria. But the other big issue Israel will have to deal with is global antisemitism, massive aliyah. All these things are the things that Israel will have to deal with, and all of us will have to deal with. And I believe that in the very long term, the future of the Jewish people is in Israel. I really, really encourage all of you to do aliyah. And if you don't do that, at least buy houses in Israel, because the prices, I can assure you, are going to go up.
General, we have more questions, but we are out of time. I invite everyone to tune into our briefing tomorrow. We'll try to catch the remainder of these questions. As an alternative to that, as the General just said, come to Israel. You can hear the General speak any night of the week, cities and towns across the country. Thank you, of course, everyone to join. We're not finished just yet. There's more to the program.
Thank you. First of all, on behalf of everybody here, I would like to thank Brigadier General Amir Avivi for tonight, for every day, for his leadership. We thank you. Thank you, Moshe, also. And thank you. I have a couple of announcements, but I'd also like to invite Michael Tepper up. He's the president of CAEF, and he'll do an official thank you. But just before he does that, I have two other messages. Firstly, I want to point out that the IDSF is a nonprofit organization. It is donor supported. I'm here to make a commercial announcement. And you can make a donation to IDSF. When you go out into the hall, you'll see there's a big poster, and it has a QR code. You can make donations directly to IDSF. And we also would like you to consider buying and reading a fabulous book called No Retreat by General Avivi. I originally thought I wouldn't get into it because it'll be military stuff and I wouldn't understand it. But I got to tell you, it is a phenomenal book at encouraging your Zionist heart. It is a fabulous read, and it really does explain what Israel is dealing with on all fronts. So please also order the book. You can do that with the QR code we have. We weren't fortunate enough to get copies here, which we had hoped to have this evening, so you could get one signed. I also want to let you know that right now is the voting period for the World Zionist Congress, and it's been a long time since Canadian Jews have had an opportunity to vote for representation. All Canadian Jews can vote. You just need to register. It costs $2. There are several platforms being put forward, and two of the organizations running have representation out in the hall that you'll see in the lobby when you leave. They have their information out there. Both of these organizations support the IDSF and the Zionist principles that you've heard about this evening. So we'd ask you to consider both of them, vote for one of them, or vote for any of the platforms that interest you, but do vote. It's very important for the future of our people that everybody participate. There's a lot of money involved. The Congress allocates money to programs that are prioritized by the different organizations, and you'll hear tonight, or you can read tonight about Herut Canada and Mizrahi Canada. They're both here. Okay, and now I would like to turn this over to Michael, and then I will share.
Thank you, Andrea. I'd like to thank, on behalf of CAEF and the other sponsoring organizations, General Avivi, once again for this extremely inspirational talk that we had this evening. The former Speaker of the House of Representatives, Thomas Tip O'Neill, once said that all politics is local. And I challenge everyone in this room to think about the principles that General Avivi enunciated today as to how they apply not only internationally and in Israel, but right here at home in Canada. Because, as General Avivi said, there are 4 wars going on. Here at the CAEF, the Canadian Antisemitism Education Foundation, we're fighting war number 3, which is the information and propaganda war, but focused in Canada. This is not a shooting war, but it's a war, all right. And there's a war with a prize. And the prize is the ideological control of our principal government institutions, primarily in the area of education, because our adversaries are playing the long game. They're playing the game where victory is 15, 20 years away. So which institution is the biggest prize in that war? I'll tell you what it is. It's the Toronto District School Board, the largest school board in Canada and the largest propaganda outlet of the future. Everything that gets taught in that school board becomes the official policies of the Government of Ontario and the Government of Canada 20 years from now. The students who graduate will be the members of Parliament, the senior bureaucrats, the judges, the cabinet ministers 20 to 25 years from now. So if we lose the war today, we will be in big trouble 20 years from now. So what can you do about it? Well, in October of this year, due to a resolution that was passed last month, the Toronto District School Board is going to be debating a resolution on so-called anti-Palestinian racism. And you know what that means? It means that we will no longer be able to tell our own stories. The stories that General Avivi said is the greatest story in the history of the world. That story will now be censored because if we explain our indigeneity to the land of Israel and our legal and moral claims to sovereignty in the land of Israel, we will be accused of anti-Palestinian racism. Lest you think that I am exaggerating or being a Cassandra, there is a teacher in Ottawa. Her name is Lisa Leviton. She is up on disciplinary charges with the Ontario College of Teachers for saying that you either support Israel or you support the terrorists. Now, you may disagree with her dichotomy, but now it's got to the point where that kind of language is considered disciplinable for a public school teacher. So what can you do? What are we asking for? This is our appeal. This is our pitch. We're not asking for money. We have enough money, but if you want to give us money, that's great. What we're asking for is intelligence. When you see instances of anti-Semitic rhetoric, let us know about it so we can take action. If you see that a public school teacher is stepping over the line, let us know. We can't act on the things that we don't know about, and we do not have universal vision. So please go to our website, send us an email, report these matters to us. If you're on Twitter, be like the Leviathan. The Leviathan is awesome. I don't know who this person is. I'd pay a large amount of money to find out so I could send that person flowers. But be like that. Be like the Leviathan. Send us the information. I filed 2 hate crime reports this week and 3 OCT, Ontario College of Teachers complaints. I'm doing everything I can, but I can only act on the information that I get. So that's my message to you. Thank you, so we can support locally everything that the General said in principle today. rmichaeltepper@gmail.com. Send it to me, rmichaeltepper@gmail.com. All information sent to me will be protected under solicitor-client privilege.
Invite them back up.
Oh, General, please come back up. We have a special gift for you.
And Moshe.
And Moshe.
So what we have is a little unique, very Jewish, but still very unique, and I apologize for the only ugly ribbons I could find in my house. These are challah covers made by the Jews of Ghana, the community of Tiferet, Israel, in a little place called Sefi Wiwaso, and I'm the president of Kulanu Canada. We support Jews all over the world, and we're happy to share these beautiful handmade challah covers with you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Don't go away. I'd now like to ask Ellie Green to come up to lead us in Hatikva.
Kol od valevav penima nefesh Yehudi homia ulfate mizrach kadima ayin letzion tzofia o lo avda tikvatenu hatikva bat shnot alpayim liot am chofshi ve'artzenu eretz Tzion v'Yerushalayim liot am chofshi ve'artzenu eretz Tzion v'Yerushalayim.